but also Telugu, Malayalam, Dogra, Kashmiri, Rajbhasha, Bengali. I have to totally absorb and understand the text, connotation, denotation, why the poet chose the words. Once I've, as much as I can, with help from those who really know, understood that, I have to make that come across to you even if you don't know the language.
Which is challenging, you know.
But that's what's fun. That's what's a pleasure. And so if you are someone who says a sloka every day in your prayers, and I'm interpreting it for you, it should come across.
Yeah,
and if someone doesn't know the language, but they should get it.
When you select a piece for performing, what do you keep in mind?
Mostly, when I select a piece, mostly I choreograph because I've been asked to do something, whether it's the location, or whether it's the theme, or whether it's the place. So I base my choice on that. For instance, we do a Mangalacharan in Odissi to begin our program. So you're going to have a sloka to a god. You can always do Ganesh or Saraswati. But when I went to Kerala for the first time, I did to Padmanabhan. It's relative. When I danced for Indo-US Science Cooperation Solar Conference, then I did Surya. So then I'm looking at what are the possibilities and how do I want to weave them.
Are you impulsive by nature?
What I jump, I'm not impulsive at all. But if anyone asks me to do something, it's what I call the Hanuman complex.
Hanuman.
Hanuman complex. Hanuman complex is this. Hanuman did not know his own abilities. When someone said, "Can you jump? Can somebody go to Lanka?" "Yes, I'll do it."
Okay.
Okay. "Can somebody get this?" "I'll do it." So if someone says, "Can you create a production?" You know, this year I created a Shiv Vivaha in Khajuraho for Shivratri, which was for the people, so there were 5,000 audience. And I haven't really done something quite like this, but can you do it? Of course. Somebody asks me to write a script for production, I'll do it. Somebody asks me put together, we're bringing a team to do a documentary on polio eradication, I'll do it.
Because your heart sings with it.
Whatever you say, my heart sings, and you say, "Can you do this? Here's a challenge." I mean, it's like, I won't say I can do it unless I can, but I will never let anyone down when they ask me to do something. And so that way I'm impulsive.
You know, there are two schools of thought, Sharon, especially for hardcore classical dancing. Those who believe that the classical form is good as it is. You know, pure. Don't mix the two. Don't mix 3-4 forms and come up with a fusion. And there are some who like to experiment. You belong to the former school. You don't like experimenting?
But I do both. I mean, I've done them. In fact, the very first production of Doordarshan's Central Production Center was the first time that I choreographed along with Bharatanatyam and Kathak. And it was a wonderful experience. Wonderful. Where we each took a different stanza that we did in our own style from Geet Govind, but we all danced to each other's music, and it was terrific. I had no idea how much fun it would be. We were very fortunate that we had time to work and make it quite solid. Very often things fusion between artists, you don't have enough time. I have loved collaborating with other dancers in other styles. It's great fun. In fact, last year I gave some choreography and some things to some other artists to do that I directed, and I've loved the collaborations. But the value of them is more in the novelty and the opportunity to see styles together. They're less likely to be solid works that are going to sustain for a long period of time. But again, it doesn't matter whether it's in one style or whether you're bringing things together. What matters is what you're communicating, what's the quality. So, very often, or too often, or when someone as an individual combined styles. It's more because they're not fully articulate in one. I use the example of language. You speak how many languages?
4.
4, all right. Now, you may be you may feel better about communicating in 2.
Right.
And when you're speaking in 1, if you're very good at it, you have full articulation. You can speak completely in that language, or you can bring in the other languages, which is great fun, and it enriches it when you're speaking to those who know those languages.
Right.
But if you're bringing in languages because you don't know enough in any one of them to communicate, then it's less. So when you bring in what you have because it actually enriches and gives more to it, that's wonderful. And modern dance is the ability to take everything you know, not only different styles of dance, but your yoga, your roller skating, your life experience, and you can create that. Then it's based on, you don't say, I'm doing Odissi in a new style. You're doing something that may be based on Odissi going forward. But besides fusion, all of the classical traditions are organic and changing. You can't keep them. They're not a stuck museum piece. The way we dance today is not the way we performed 25 years ago.
So what brings in the novelty? The dancer?
Novelty is not important.
Or the newness, or the enriching process?
It's what you need to say. And so, if, for one thing, people have less time. Not only less time, but we all see things more quickly. MTV kind of cutting. And so, if you're going to have a leisurely exposition in a dance performance, it has to be that you are really bringing your audience into a space where they want to be there. And that's very appropriate with certain dances. But there's other things where you need to do it in a way that it will fit the attention span. For instance, 25, 35 years ago, we always did a program that was 2.5 hours, and we would always have an intermission and change costume.
But not anymore.
Your audience will be gone. They have to go to dinner.
True.
You know, they'll come for a little bit. And so you structure things differently.
So it's a reflection of society? It's a reflection of the constraints, limitations, or the progress of society?
Keeping in mind that all of the classical traditions are not more than a couple of 100 years in their present form. And many of them have changed totally, been reconstructed within the last 100. So the antecedents go back, Natya Shastra, sculpture 1,000 years old, Odissi, there was relief sculpture of dancers from 200 BC. But that doesn't mean the dance I do on the stage is that dance. You have a tradition, an oral tradition, informed by continuing traditions. But it's all neoclassical, revived. And so it continues to change. When my guru was dancing in, say, the 50s, they eliminated things from the tradition so that it would be Sanskritized and accepted as a classical form. Then as Odissi was accepted, 20 years later, things were brought back.
You've seen the Indian art scene or the dance scene change over the last 25 years. We'll talk about that and a lot more. Right now we go in for another break.
वीडोल 4 कदम HDB प्राइमा इंजन ऑयल पे भरोसा है। अब प्राइमा बना CA4 और लाया 4 कदम।
हंसते हंसते
कट जाए रस्ते।
वीडोल HDB प्राइमा इंजन ऑयल।
Because it's very easy to, talk about negative things of others, but every human being, every creative person, they do have good qualities and good points if we have the ability to
imbibe
see
them.
and find it.
Welcome back. We're in conversation with Sharon Lowen, well-known dancer. Sharon, the Indian dance scene over the last 25 years. Tell us the changes.
I would say that 25 years or so, I remember talking with Sanjukta Panagrahi about it. That generation of artists were making the art known. They were the result of really the dance being part of the independence movement and people being part of national identity.
True.
They were part of the dance becoming respectable. And then, after independence, dance became part of national integration. And so it played an important role. So in the early days, they were making the dance known. Gradually, what's happened is that the dance has been taken up by so many girls and young men as part of their education. And so what's happened is that whereas their effort was to present the dance, to get people to want to see it at all, gradually there's so many artists that it's very hard for good artists to get the platforms. And also there was a gentler time when artists would be introduced to the Rasikas, and then their name would grow, and then it would come up. Whereas the patronage has changed. And so one of the big changes now is that you have a lot more group dance, which I think is a very good thing. Because when you have groups performing, you have opportunity for more students to perform. And it also has a general appeal, which is very nice for everyone. And also, it's so difficult for a solo artist to go from being a student to being able to hold the stage alone for 2.5 hours that, it can be painful for both. So it's good to be part of a group and to do small things and to gradually come up that way. At the same time, I would say, though, that just as you don't have a lot of Indian orchestras, because the art that's created by one artist can't be done in an orchestra. It's different. Wonderful, but different. In the same way, in classical Indian dance, and a mature artist who can that has good abhinaya, can do something that will have more impact than a wonderful group.
Do you think quality is taking a hit in terms of the kind of dancers that are?
I think there's always been good dance, not so good dance. There's always been, one of the things that I loved about Kelu Babu's attitude was that he was extremely generous, and he did not worry that the art would be ruined by teaching many students. He knew that the separation would come and that the ones that were quality would last and the others would enjoy and would do. And because he was so generous in his teaching, he did create many, many disciples.
How marketing savvy should you be to rise?
I would say today you have to be very market savvy. I sort of, when I came to India, I abandoned whatever professional savvy I had because there wasn't any market. I mean, being a Videshi, there was no question of any kind of marketing working. The only thing that worked was if somehow you see me dance, and then you decide that, wow, I mean, actually it's good. So there was no question of marketing. And so I just danced because I loved to dance. I remember in '78, Biman Ghosh from HMV Records, he said, Sharon, you're already in the top 10% of artists, but you will never achieve that recognition because of being a foreigner. So it was like, what a dancer in India feels entitled to aspire to when they're well trained and they're a good artist, and that they can market. You make your brochure, you send it to all of the festivals, and you meet people and you do it and say, you know, I should be in this young artist festival and
You
I should
lobby
be this
and
and
thing
that.
like that.
Well, even there's a lot of it that actually is not even lobbying. A certain amount is just straightforward being professional. That there are avenues of young artist festivals and things which it's appropriate to be considered, and people have to know who you are. And as a young artist, it's not inappropriate to introduce yourself.
Right.
To do that.
Right.
Okay. Then, of course, there's the other levels of where everyone, either from their community, minimally, the support, or because of their batchmates or their fathers or their brothers or their lovers or their godfathers or their husbands, and they have all of that support, which is unfortunate but really there. But basically, you know, I guess I'm an example that to some extent, without having any of that support and without having even the traditional venues, there's no government support, there's no festivals for me, and yet I'm sitting here today because people have
Yes.
appreciated and people have seen.
Sharon, quickly wanting to
Yeah.
come to your little affair, brief affair with movies, Swarn
Okay.
Kamalam. I took you a little by surprise.
That's right.
But Swarn
That's right.
Kamalam,
Yeah.
tell us a bit about that experience.
K. Vishwanath, the director, was watching morning TV, just like this. He saw me interviewed, and he said, "That's it. She is the one who can inspire the heroine played by Banu Priya to value her tradition, because her father is a blind guru and she wants to be something like an airline stewardess or work in a hotel." So he sent Rajan Sajan Mishra to meet me in Delhi.
Okay.
And I wound up playing myself as the inspiration for the dancer. It was a fabulous experience. Going to Kashmir and Andhra and Madras, and it was the first time that classical Odissi has been seen in a Telugu film, and it was really
That must
wonderful.
be lovely. Okay, wow.
It was great.
And how was it doing Kalidas?
Kalidas is one of my most favorite projects because when we do recordings for television, most often artists will bring in something they do on the stage, but every media is different. So just as the classical dance we do on the stage is transformed from the way it was presented in the temple, where you did it in the round and you have a different size audience, proscenium stage has created a different format. When you're doing for a camera, you can think differently. So Kalidas was the opportunity to, number one, since you're cutting, I did 5 different heroines of Kalidas, moving from sort of an anthropomorphic nature, and then up to Shakuntala and Malavika, Meghadoot, and Kumar Sambhavam. Each one a different set, different costume, different rag, different text. And I do believe that when it's for the camera, that Abhinaya comes through very well, because you can have the close-ups. So the dance was choreographed for the camera,
Okay.
so that I would have short stanza of text and then dance. But if the text was that her fingers were trembling, then I know that's a close-up shot. It's not like telling them to pan in on something. And so things were choreographed for the camera. And I believe it's the only Doordarshan National Program of Dance that got something like 8 newspaper reviews.
It was beautiful.
It was such a pleasure to do it, and we did it in a very leisurely way. It's sort of like we won't do the first one until that grass is growing, so we wait 2 months to shoot it. So each 5-minute segment was shot about a month apart.
But you had a long association with Doordarshan. You know, we've
have.
completed 50 golden years Tell us a bit about your association with
Well, it
Doordarshan.
has been golden, actually. I think my first performances were Manipuri for satellite TV, and it was a shed outside of this building, actually, when the original Mundy House was still here, and that was satellite that was sent around to the farmers, and oh, it's wonderful. Besides Delhi Doordarshan, it used to be a tradition that whenever one went performing to another state, that one would also do a program for the local television, which would also help cover expenses and be a pleasure. So, you know, I remember doing things in Orissa and in Chennai and in Bombay and Bhopal and Kashmir and various places. When, after the Asiad Games, there was a golden period for the arts when CPC was dedicated to dance and music. And the productions that were done there are literally historic and the best things that have been done. I wish that the days when audiences saw a lot of dance was still there, because it meant that every Indian grew up, because it was national integration, but they knew about dance and music from around India. And now, very often youngsters come to do an interview and they feel very shy and embarrassed because they really don't know anything about the dance.
So if there was one wish that you would like to see Doordarshan doing, what would that wish be?
I would like Doordarshan to make a commitment, which I think is partially there but can be more, not only to be looking at marketing, but to be looking at a policy of what is the place of the arts in identity, national integration, representing the pride of India, and just basic literacy about what India is and was. I think initially it was there automatically because the dance is visual and you don't know what to put in front of a camera. So you're going to have dances. But it wasn't a formulated policy. And I think that, again, as the Mahatma said, let the doors and windows of my house be open, but let me keep my feet on the floor. So today it's wonderful that the youth and everyone of India has got access to everything that's in the West, that's in the world, which we all should have and want to have. But you have to know who you are. You have to have your own identity. You know, I am who I am. And I wouldn't be able to be interpreting this tradition if I wasn't also the person who grew up in another tradition and still is who I am. I'm not changing into something else. So to be Indian, you have to know what your identity is.
To be anchored, to be rooted.
You have to be anchored, right.
One final question, Sharon. What does it take to be a good dancer?
I think it takes the same thing it takes to be anything. I think that you have to, of course, they say riyaz, riyaz, riyaz. I think you have to have good karma to find a good teacher. And I think that half of your riyaz is your actual learning and practice, and half of your riyaz is how you live your life and the kind of person that you are, so that the more you know about everything, the better you will be as an artist, so that nothing you learn is ever lost. And the more you know about music, the more you know about philosophy, the more you know about literature, other arts, the more you will bring to your art, because just becoming a technician is good up to a point. If you want to sustain, you have to have something that's unique, which everyone is. You have to be able to share that uniqueness.
I think that's wonderfully put, Sharon. And I want to now, before saying goodbye, tell you once again that we spoke of poetry in motion. Conducting this interview with you, looking at you, hearing you talk, it was sheer poetry in motion. As we say goodbye, we play a lovely song for you. It's from the film Guide,
Oh, wonderful.
and it's also about dancing and expression. So let's take a look and we say goodbye. Thank you for coming.
जाने क्या